everyone. I am Mary Kate Luke. I'm the marketing specialist here at Hasmark Publishing International, and I am joined today by our lovely author, Caryn Nash. She is the author of Legacies of Love, Stories of Courage and Resilience. We're so excited to be chatting with her today on our Life After Release series, which is a video series that we're starting here on our channel to chat with our past authors, sort of see what they're up to, what's happened since the release of their book, and to keep kind of the conversation going. So if anyone is out there looking to become a published author, maybe they're a writer and they want to see sort of how the process goes and what to expect, this is a great tool for them to be able to watch this. So Caryn, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so happy to have you here. I was hoping that you could start and sort of tell our audience a little bit about yourself and about your wonderful book.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mary Kate. Well, to start with, I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a retired researcher. My career has always been in the medical field, and I started being a clinician, and then I went to being an academic, working in the university, working and teaching in the university, and then I went back to school later in life and got my master's degree. And after that, I became a researcher, and as such, and also during my master's degree, that's when I really started writing, because I had to, I wrote a thesis, and at the same time, I had a fellowship there. So I was also working on other research studies and doing research proposals and presentations and whatnot. So that really was my introduction to writing, because before that, I mean, writing wasn't even in my lexicon. You know, I was a therapist. And once I got there, I sort of became, a writer. But what changed was after I retired, I underwent some very serious life-altering events that somehow I got relief by writing about it. And I kept a journal, and I started writing about these events and how they affected me and how I dealt with them. And that sort of morphed into more of writing about everyday events. I started keeping the journal and writing about things that were around me and nature and things that I liked. And I wrote stories. I started writing little essays, as you would call them. And they were just on my computer, just whatever things that I wrote. And then I realized it wasn't enough. I never had any literary background, no literary education, and I needed to learn more about writing from a personal perspective. I always written from a scientific perspective, so I enrolled in one of our community center in a very good, what turned out to be an amazing writing class, where we were about 12 people, 12 individuals, and each week, our instructor, who is also an author and a university, teaches writing in different courses at Concordia University in Montreal. And we would always do a topic, like learn about writing with sensibilities, or writing about emotion, or, writing about a past experience, or writing dialogue. Each lesson, there was a writing technique that we would learn, and then we would go home and write a story about these topics that she would teach us. And interestingly enough, the week after, when all of us would prepare our stories and read our stories, even though we all had the same topic, all the stories were so vastly different. And it just shows how your writing technique really comes within. It melds with what you are inside, and what you produce is really your own. So I took that course for many years, and I had accumulated a huge number of stories. And in the process, I was also on a spiritual journey. So my stories became a lot spiritually based, about how my ideology changed and how faith and the universe and all these things had an effect on our lives and how we deal with our lives and how we cope with not only stress and negative situations, but also, even joyful situations can be stressful too, dealing with family, and there's always things. So it got to a point where I took the course for 4 years. I'd amassed a whole lot of stories. And at that time, I realized, I have to share this with others. I have a lesson to share with others. I have a, I can inspire others. They can learn from my stories, how I responded, because from each adversity that I dealt with, I learned from it, became stronger. I was more able to cope with the next one that came along. So that's how my writing started. And just like that, I said, maybe I can write a book. I mean, I have a lot of material, but I didn't know where to get started. I mean, I this was the last thing on my bucket list, so to speak. And so that's it. Should I continue, or would you like to?
Okay. I was just going to say, you've sort of touched on it already. It's so beautiful how writing can be so healing, but I was hoping maybe you could just chat about how, this story is so deeply personal to you.
Yes.
What was sort of the inspiration behind the whole, you've sort of briefly touched on it, but if you could talk about some inspiration.
What happened was, when I looked back in these stories, they were very inspirational. They all had a take-home message that when I would see other people, any other people, and mostly women in like 40 to 60 age group, going through life changes, midlife changes, family, whatever, divorce, death in families and whatever. And maybe my experience, which I've written, can help other people. And that's when I sort of said, well, I started off, well, maybe I can do some speaking engagements and, portray my message that way. And then I was very lucky enough to come into contact, and I think that's also the universe, with Janet Lynn Morrison, who became my mentor. And she's the one that really told me what my problem was. And my problem was, I had too much material for one book. So she says, you have to focus. You have to look at all yours. And she asked me at that point, she was a coach, and I had, taken some seminars with her, and we connected. So she asked me to send her some of my stories, and she liked my writing a lot. And she says, yeah, you really have, you can write a book. And me write a book? Like, it was a dream, but I never thought it could be a reality. And we persevered. And what I did was divide all my stories into different sections and really separated them, like filed them, like documented them into different categories. And I came up with 3 books. Wow. And I chose, the one I chose, Legacies of Love, was what I wanted to write about first. And I started, and she made me focus, and I wrote an outline, and I decided how I'm going to lay it out, what I want to talk about, and how the book was going to flow. And then she said, I want to introduce you to my publisher. So she spoke to the lovely Judy O'Byrne, and we had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, and the 3 of us, and we talked about my book. And at that time, I didn't have a real title to my book. And I guess when I spoke, Judy really felt my passion, and knowing Janet Lynn, I guess the referral was a legitimate referral, and we talked about it, and she sent me a book publishing contract, and like, I was astounded. So that's how that was the inspiration. And that's how I got to your team at Hasmark.
And the rest is
And
history.
the rest is history. But you know what? It was really a learning experience, because once I spoke to Judy, I realized when I went over these stories that these were written over the past 4 or 5 years and at different times and stages, and my writing style had changed. So basically, I had the basis for all the stories, but I had to augment them, not totally rewrite them, but add more feeling into them. More. When I write, I want to take my readers on the journey with me. I don't want them to read a page like I went here and then I went there and I went there. I want them to feel the emotions I was feeling as I was going through an experience. And as I read them afterwards, I realized the majority of them had a lesson that I inadvertently had. That a lesson that I went through something, this is what I did, and I learned something that I will improve myself next time. And at that point, I didn't know, is it a self-help book? Is it a memoir? Like, is it a biography? And that's when, Judy said, here's the contract. And I had to go back and rewrite. And I spoke to Judy initially I think it was the beginning of September last year. And I submitted my manuscript on January 10th. So I don't know if you would consider it took me 4 years to write the book or basically 7 months, but I had the basis of it before.
I love that. That's so incredible. Now, what would you say were some of sort of the barriers that you faced or any roadblocks during the writing process and coming from conception to releasing the book?
My first roadblock that I had when I was reviewing my book, like what I had originally placed that I was planning to submit, was, I guess you would call it writer's block. Not writer's block that I didn't have an idea, but I knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't get it on paper. And I would read it and I would print it and I would read it again. And it just, so many of the stories just not sit right. So that got me very frustrated at the beginning. Some were good, some were not good. And then after a while, I realized that if I just persevered, it falls into place and they were good. So don't stress yourself when you can't do it. Put it away for a bit and then come back to it. So that was one barrier. The other thing that I realized when I was doing it seriously, ready to submit, I found there was empty spaces. There was spots that needed other stories. Like it wouldn't flow. I needed more. So in that process, I had to write a few more stories. So the flow of the story went linearly, so to speak, right. Or there wasn't really blocks of emptiness, like I went from here to there. So it flowed. So that was really, and the other thing that is really a problem, not a problem, is a habit I have, which I'm told by you guys at Hasmark, by all the webinars I've taught, you have to stop editing. Every time you go over it, you're going to change it. It has to come a time where you have to say, this is it, and send it in. Because if you're going to do it, each time you write it, you're going to change this word, change that word, change sentence structure. And that was a difficult thing for me.
It's hard. It's hard when you're so close to it because it's so personal and you just want it to be perfect. And I totally understand that mindset.
So those were the barriers I have. And I have to tell you, I approached this project with a lot of trepidation because it was totally new to me. the publishing process. Um, I don't have, I was never in that milieu. I was always in the scientific milieu. When publishing, you go to a journal and it's not the same thing at all. So I didn't know what to expect. And I was sort of a little nervous about the process. But I have to tell you, once the day that I submitted my manuscript, I was amazed. That same day or the next morning, I got a beautiful letter from Judy welcoming me to the Housemarque family, introducing me to the team, introducing me to who's going to be taking care of what, telling me I would be in contact, who's going to be in contact with me, when, where, and at what point along the journey. And I was there. And within a week, I spoke to Ashley and she gave me the questionnaire so she can get the information she needs to get started. And then I met with her a couple of times, and then my book cover. And I have to tell you, my experience with Anne Carklands was absolutely amazing. I had I might be creative with words, but I'm no artist. And I can't visualize stuff. Like I can't visualize drawings, or I had no idea what I wanted my cover to be. And yes, they read the book, and and from what I got from the first round was so different from the second and third, was because Anne, through our discussions and the whatever time I needed, was there for me to understand what I wanted to portray. And she portrayed it so beautifully. And I'll tell you, I was shocked with the book cover that I loved the one I chose, because purple is purple is a color that I never wear. I don't like. I'm not a big fan of purple. And it just felt right. Mm-hmm. And I like the colors that she chose, it was funny. She asked me what colors I like. So I said, I like red. And then she came back with a beautiful cover of red. And then when I asked my daughter, she said, and with a chain, and she says, you know what, Mom, that sounds more like, a relationship type of cover, mm-hmm. like with a chain and red. It more looks like love, not
right.
Kind of. And she listened to me, and we came up with that. And I researched the color purple, and I said it was so right. It was so right for my book, for what I wanted to convey. So yeah, it was really a good journey.
It's a powerful color.
It's a powerful color. It has its drawbacks, because just like all things, you can have a negative perspective and a positive perspective, and and not only does it portray, it portrays the book, because the book portrays me, and it turned out to be a wonderful thing. And I've used in everything I've developed afterwards, my logo, my brand, and whatever, it's purple and white. So I like continuity, and so that was very good.
Now, when the book released and it became a bestseller, which is amazing, congratulations on that. I want to know how that felt for you. What was that feeling when you got that news about it reaching that status?
I have to tell you, the last stages were so anxiety driven for me, because I was stuck to a date of a release date, because it coincided with a very special date in my life. It corresponded with my husband's 85th birthday. So it was around the time. So I said, wouldn't that be nice to have my book launch? And his 85th birthday on the same night. So at the end, getting everything organized and getting the book ready and whatever, it was like, the deadlines and the this and the that. And I had organized I decided to have a party because I was going to have sort of a party for my husband. It was a perfect opportunity. And unfortunately, my books were not ready, so I couldn't have my books at the party, but I'm very ingenious. And so I went to a printer and I got some ring bounded copy, so at least people could see. They can get they can look at it with their hands and see what it is, and I can read from it, which I did. So that was good. And I remember after everybody came in and had something to eat, whatever, we sat in the living room behind me, and I sat in the chair and I started to chat. And then I got this email from, I think, Michaela, "You're a bestseller." In front of all those people. It was in the middle of the book launch. I said, oh my God. I mean, I hoped it would sell. I mean, but never in a million years could I imagine that it was a bestseller. I said, how is that possible? How is that possible? Even the next day I called Jen and whatever, and she showed me and we figured it out. But yeah, it was remarkable. And all the people, and I had my writing teacher here.
Oh, lovely.
And I had Janet Lynn on Zoom for part of it.
Nice.
And she was here when I heard it. And so, I mean, people telling me, congratulations, you're an author. I mean, you should be so proud of yourself. You're an author. I mean, so many people want to become a writer and want to publish, and they never do. And, it's very different than publishing scientific articles. That doesn't have the glory of a book, because as a researcher, it's not a book unless you write a book. I wrote a lot of articles and did different journals or whatnot. But your own book, I have to say, it was, after that period, the month before, of editing and proofreading and layout and this and that, and there's always snags. I mean, that's part of the story. And it was a little more difficult for me because it was the first time. Mm-hmm. Not only was it the first time, but I had no prior knowledge of the process at all. So, I was learning along the way, and I make mistakes, and, these things happen, and that's why we go back and forth. And that's why I'm so grateful for the team for working with me through all that. And yeah, so that night was like I was in La La Land.
That's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. It really was.
Have you celebrated any other successes in relation to the book since its launch?
Well, I have enrolled in a few book award contests.
Lovely.
And I have been selected as one of the 25 finalists in one of the organizations. It's Quebec Writers Federation. I'm waiting.
That's exciting.
Their results come in November. So one of the criteria for them, they're also an organization, a nonprofit organization, supporting Quebec writers and readers. So one of the criteria was making sure your books are in their libraries. So my books are in various libraries that they're associated, which is great because people will see them on the shelves, and it's much more visibility than I have through word of mouth. I also approached our community library here where I live, and she agreed. She is going to read it, and it's going to be reviewed at the library, and if they approve, they will interview me, and I can speak or whatever they choose. And interestingly enough, books and reading has always been so important to me. I cannot, despite all my science and my work, if I didn't have a book in my hands to read, I could not go to sleep. And when I finished a book, I had to have another one on hand.
Yep.
So I have to read. So that also made me very critical of my own writing. And also in the process made me identify some really good books and some really not so good books.
Yeah.
And I'm also involved in various book clubs because in these book clubs, it gives me the opportunity to read a lot of books that I might not necessarily choose on my own. And in one of these book clubs, I'm one of the organizers. There's 3 organizers. And, so I'm on the committee to choose books and choose reviewers and whatever. So I have a little in with a few people, reviewers, people in the book industry that I have a chance to approach, but have not approached as yet. So
phenomenal. So many amazing things going on. So congratulations on all of those. It's so exciting.
Yeah. And I have my second book in the offing that in my.
That was my next question. Can you tell us anything about new future projects? Any tidbits or sneak peeks?
Sure. There was a lot, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of material that I wanted to put in this book, and a big portion of it that I just didn't. It was too much to put in another section in that book. It was like a book in itself. So I'm working on a sequel to Legacies of Love. It's also about faith and my enduring my strength and courage, because I have overcome several life-threatening health incidences in my life, and through the same courage and surrendering to the issues and positive attitude as opposed to negative attitude, and even when I was very sick, and instead of sitting back and saying, okay, I said, I'm living my life, I'm going to continue, and whatever I can do, and the rest is not up to me. And I have survived quite a few people who know me, know my story, have said, oh my God, you're like a cat with 9 lives. So that's my next book. That's
incredible. Well, we are so looking forward to it. Your first book was so beautiful. It's so empowering and has, like you said, so much heart. And we just look forward to seeing what you come out with next, because we know it's going to be just as incredible.
I hope so. That's my plan. I hope it will go well, and we'll have I'll have another book or 2 or 3 along the way.
That's amazing. We're looking forward to it. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Caryn. It's been so lovely to hear more about you and your story and what you have next, and all the wonderful awards that you're looking forward to and everything. So congratulations on all of that. And thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been amazing.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you and your team for getting me there, because I definitely could not have gotten there myself. So
you're so
thank
welcome.
you for all the wonderful people working so close with me and helping me do what I've done.
Perfect. And we'll be there for the next one, next 2, 3, however many you have.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Caryn.
Thank you.